Welcome everyone to another exciting episode of the Bottom Line. Easy E's just returning from a cruise, just got back in the country, and he's got a son wrestling tonight, so he'll pop in and out. Brett, the Hitman, is going to be on in a little while, but until then, I've got the legendary A-Train joining me to talk everything football until we get everybody else on board.
Yes, sir.
Got a special guest for you tonight.
Yeah.
Again, being a guy that keeps it real, I might have a bone or two to pick with him. So promises to be entertaining, if nothing else.
Yes. Hey, what's going on? Predator couples in the house, and Will Freeman. Good evening to you all. You know what? That's fine. But until then, hey, can we talk a little bit
Absolutely.
about the past games, and then when we get our guests and everyone else to arrive, we'll talk more in depth on it. But uh, got to go to the college football playoff. From last week. Whatever, John. I don't like him no way. So you already know how I feel about it. So I don't care about this guy. Who cares about him, man? For real. But see, no,
if you stand up a little bit, A-Train, it's gonna look like you got a football helmet on.
It does. Won't it? If I stand up right there. but no, I am. I was impressed by the two games, from college football playoff, and seeing how Michigan was able to pull it out against Alabama, because a lot of people really felt that Alabama had a big, real good shot at getting into the national championship. And I thought Washington, even though they won the game, they looked like they were going to lose the way they were handling Texas. So,
and what a difference a quarter makes, because they had the game. It seemed like they had the game in control in the third quarter, and it's like.
They did. And then that fourth quarter when they came around, what's going on, Maya? Good seeing you. And I was like more on the edge when it came to, because I wanted to see Washington get into the national title game. They're the last Pac-12 champion, and so wanted to see how that would have been if getting them into the national championship on Monday night in Houston. So that's going to be something really big.
So I got to ask you.
Okay.
After seeing both games, did it not pretty much solidify that the committee got it right?
Oh God. With the games, the competition, yeah, of course, because they all were fighting for a national championship. So yeah, of course, the competition was gonna be.
Competition committee nailed it. You got two games that come down to the nitty gritty. You know as well as I do that if Florida State would have been in there, it would have been another Iowa-Tennessee game that everybody had been snoozing through.
I mean, it was about as bad as with I guess the Georgia Florida State game, and even I'll still say it. A lot of their starters did not play, and they weren't going to play. They looked at that as a consolation game for not getting into the college football playoff, which hence is why we get 12 teams for the playoff anyway. So
I say you go straight 16. I mean, if you're gonna do 12, you're giving 4 teams a bye week, right?
The problem with that is when you have, and I know it's unfortunate, a team like Liberty, when they faced off against Oregon, like Oregon was like incensed to make sure that Liberty was exactly who they were.
And they did a pretty good job of it, didn't they?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. They were incensed on making sure that Liberty was just a Conference USA team. So the argument comes in from that standpoint, because you had a Conference USA team that was undefeated that went into a New Year's Six game, and they got smoked. So I'm listening to it on the radio, and I'm like, man. And I watched some of the game too, and I'm like, there was no way that Liberty could be in the same league with Oregon at all.
Yeah. So I mean, unlike the basketball, I mean, football only being able to play once a week, you can't get too crazy as far as how big the field is for the
Right.
playoffs.
Mm-hmm.
But I think the difference between 12 and 16 is you basically take a bye week away from the top 4 seeds, which, I can live with that. That would be as big as the field could get, as far as I'm concerned. But is there not an argument to be made after this year's bowls that if it ain't the college playoffs, for the most part, they're not worth watching?
Okay. I'm sorry. I just got some messages roll in from a couple of people, a couple of sources and stuff. So yeah, just
But
to get some understanding about this whole ordeal with the UFL dispersal draft and stuff. But we're not gonna talk about that just yet. We're gonna wait until the guys come in. Hello, Sandy. Good to see you, as always. Good to see you on board. And hey, folks, if you got this, if you're watching on Facebook, make sure you share it on your pages. If you're watching it on YouTube, make sure you share it or copy it to your page as well. Okay, wherever you are, Twitter, Facebook, whatever. So look, he's chiming in.
he is. He is.
So
He's probably
he
watching
must
his
be.
boy wrestle right now. But you ought to have seen it, man. Our phones were hot because I had to keep him up to speed on what the scores were while he was out on the ship because he couldn't get the internet, so I had to keep him
Right.
in tune. And for the most part, for me, the bowl games were unwatchable. If it wasn't the college football playoff games, they were unwatchable. Fill in the blank.
We don't need all of these bowl games. As a matter of fact, all we really need is the college football championship. That's it, the playoff. If you're gonna have all of these different bowl games, man, it's just a big money grab these days, and that's where I have a big issue with it. Because it's just sending to schools so they can get six figure. Let me say that 6 figure, 7 figure amounts to participate, but it's all big. It's one big money grab, and unless you're gonna put some better teams into this mix. Shout out to Mizzou. They did their thing, even though it was very, very hard to watch. That game against Ohio State.
So
Nobody
did,
cares that you gave up the Golden Bachelor for this. You want to go look at the wedding, man. Hey, but I appreciate you coming on though.
so did you see my scenario for the Iowa Hawkeye game?
Which one? Because
I've been it a few times, didn't I?
right, you went off a bit.
I think there's an argument to be made that if you go back, turn back the page, go to the Big Ten Championship, allow Iowa to still play in the Big Ten Championship, allow them to still play in the Citrus Bowl, but instead we play those games without a quarterback. And we just go in there and run Wildcat the whole game. Because if you look at our quarterback in the Citrus Bowl, the Hawkeyes drive for amazingly the opportunity to get a touchdown, which we haven't seen in weeks. Throws an interception, pick in the end zone. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Throws a pick six for a touchdown. Fumbles the ball on his own 1 yard line. So if you take away, let's say our offense, since we're not a juggernaut, if we would only got a field goal, let's say we only got a field goal on that drive that he threw the pick in the end zone. Right. So that's 3 points. Take away the pick six, take away the fumble on the 1 yard line. There's 2 more touchdowns you take away. Yeah. So now you're down to 21-3, right? That we're only losing 21-3. Correct. He threw a couple more picks in the game that led to points. So there's an argument to be made. If Iowa went without a quarterback, it would have been a lot more. So ESPN even picked up on that. That's cutting news right there, baby. The minute I said that, they chimed in and they said, Iowa to play the 2024 season without a quarterback.
Okay. All right. Hey, that was perfect timing. You know what I
All
mean?
right, point well taken, Eric. I will get off the Iowa thing. No, they aren't worth talking about. That's true.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
I was hoping that my man Brett would be on by now because he's still raw. He's still raw about the Alabama game.
No, that's all right though. Yes,
So I
I'm gonna
wanted
give my
I
draft
wanted
boy
to
too.
get his opinion on the Alabama game, and I'm sure he would have very colorful commentary on how that game went.
All right, hey folks, we're coming up on the show today. We're gonna have Howard Balzer, NFL writer from Phoenix Sports, and of course he's a Hall of Fame selector. So we're gonna get his thoughts a bit on because we should have got that out the way too. But we hoping that you jump on in on this edition. He'll be coming on very shortly around 7:30, and yeah, it's wild how this whole thing with the college football playoff has gone on. You know what I mean? And so um, I'm actually okay. That somebody didn't expect, but I was surprised. Um, with the four teams and how good they were going all the way to the end and whatnot. And I'm glad that Michigan was able to get Alabama out of there, get them out. So, and I'm also, but now it's Washington's turn. I want the Pac-12 to win the national championship when it get to that and get to that stage. I'm really rooting for Michael Penix as much as everybody's giving him crap that he's 23. He's been in he's been in for 6 years and stuff, and I'm like, it's his time. So
So answer me this, A Train.
okay,
I want to know if you think this is a big nothing burger or whether you think it actually has teeth.
okay,
Are you not sick of hearing them constantly talking about the cheating scandal with Michigan?
okay. About that, listen. I- From what I've seen, it's all said and done, and they pay the price or whatever you want to call it. I understand that the penalty wasn't stiff enough. A lot of people want to see Jim Harbaugh fail anyway. So um, let's move on, move forward, and whatnot. And you're not cheating if you ain't trying. So
Say, did you see the contract that's been rumored to be floating in front of him right now? 10-year contract. I think it's 125 million
do you
with
not take it?
a carrot that if he accepts it, he cannot take an NFL job at least for the first year of the contract. But to me, the whole Michigan cheating scandal is nothing but a big nothing burger. Because you go back to the ages, like I've said before, of leather helmets with no mask. They've always been cheating. I mean, I go to my high school. My youngest son, when he was in high school for Eureka, we used to go to the games, and both sidelines would have like four guys with stocking caps on and big cardboard signs and coats and whatever, and they're flipping around and they're doing this and doing that, whatever. And what are they doing? They're trying to keep the other team from stealing their signs. So I mean, it's something that's been done since father time, and it's like, why can all of a sudden do you want to cry foul and make an example of one program when they all do it?
Right, exactly. I think I'm hoping I can pull it up. There's a story that I just seen by Pro Football Talk. I'm hoping it allows me to pull it up. Um, is that it? There it is. Ben DiNucci plans to sign a futures deal with the Broncos on Monday. So don't bother, Dirty, asking about DiNucci playing for the
that's
Battlehawks.
that is a sight for sore eyes right there. I hope they sign Danucci to a 10-year contract to go with all the other 10-year. The contracts they've thrown. We'll get into that with Howard later, but
Yeah,
I'm going to bring that up with him because we got a big discussion to have about the Broncos.
it's
That
going
is
to be
for certain.
interesting to see if AJ McCarron is going to do the same. You know. But yeah, there it is. Goodbye, Nooch, and he's actually gone. So, well, that's the plan. At least is what's being put out there. So let's not act like he's gone officially, but he plans on remaining, with the Broncos or signing a futures deal and staying with them. So, with that being said, that means his rights will be gone from
Well,
the XFL. So,
and if they think AJ is going to do the same thing, you got. Do I want to sign a contract in this hand with all that green stuff? Or do I want to stay with the Battlehawks over here and go into Birmingham and stick it to my old college team where I won 2 national championships?
oh, don't let Brett
Uh,
come in because
there's
he'll let you know it's
there's
train,
all
it's
there's
train.
always more money. There's always more money. You only get so many chances to stick it to the Stallions with their
Exactly.
130-man roster.
Stealing signs is part of the game of paying people to go to your opponents for weeks is cheating. Hey, that's what the New England Patriots did, right? They were able to find out what the freaking
Yeah,
Rams did.
what's the difference between putting on dark glasses and sitting in the crowd stealing signs or taking a football and making it flat before the game so you can't fumble it? I mean, what's the difference?
Right. Exactly. Exactly that. So yeah, man, I'm like at this rate now, it is. I mean, we got to move past that. You know what I mean? And we could bitch about it later down the line. As years progress, and if Michigan wins the national championship, it's going to be nothing but another uh, everybody complaining that they shouldn't deserve to be in that situation anyway.
I was torn in that game. Jim Harbaugh had a chance to be the Vikings head coach, and that didn't happen. But I don't know. This was his third year in a row of being in the playoffs. It was kind of nice to see him get past the first round. Now you could tell in the post game interview that it
Yeah,
was like the weight of the world had been lifted off his shoulders, man, and to get to the
absolutely,
next round.
absolutely, man. It was perfect for him. At this rate, um, I think if he does take that $125 million, this 10-year contract, really going to be interesting to see how well um he's like you said, how long he's going to stay. Is it going to be after a year? And I'm surprised Michigan even put that kind of stipulation in his contract. I would have told him it's either you take this or no NFL at all, or
Yeah,
5 years down the road or something like that.
that just goes to show you that certain people are wired different. And, they always want to say it's all about the money, but if you're handed 125 million and you can just sit on easy street, but you're willing to throw all that away to go back to the NFL to get to a Super Bowl, does that
Yeah,
not say that you got that competitive drive that it's hard to fault a guy? I
yeah,
mean,
it is. It is a bit. Yeah, no question, no question. It is hard. And listen, folks, I'm not. I'm not finna harp too much on it. All I just want to see is the underdog like Washington to win the national championship. That's where we're at now.
man, it doesn't matter whether it's who makes the college playoffs, who wins the college playoffs. You're all about the Rudy, Rudy,
Oh yeah.
Rudy.
Oh yeah. I've always been about the underdog, man. Always.
So you had a tear in your eye while you watched Rudy, didn't you?
Man, listen, I don't think about Rudy. I don't think it was Rudy, but I had a tear in my eye when I saw freaking Texas beat USC in the national title game because I was rooting for USC. But Texas was a big underdog in that game. And then, they had the big lead, of course, and they USC wound up losing by like 3 points. So, because nobody expected Texas and Vince Young to do what they did in that national championship game. Yep. See, exactly. This is the last time the Pac-12 team playing for a championship. So,
Yeah,
it, 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 it
there's only a couple teams that were left high and dry out there.
yep. Well, let's go ahead and we're gonna bring in your co-host. He's gonna come in the mix now. Brett is here. What's going on, sir?
It's
Yeah.
about
Hey,
time you come in because you come in prime time for college football talk. So
uh,
take it away. So take it
no
away.
comprende, I said. No, no.
Take it away because we were just having a discussion about Michigan or Alabama. You make the call, and we were thinking, that it was kind of nice to see Jim Harbaugh win, but I have a feeling that you probably don't feel the same way.
See,
But isn't it justification the way the two college football playoff games went that the committee got it exactly right on who they put in the playoffs?
I really do feel like I am glad that moving forward, I'll say this, with a 12-team playoff, I hope we have less controversy. And uh, I'm a little worried, and I even caught some of Feinbaum last night. I'm worried about they're putting a little too much emphasis on conference championships moving forward with the 12-team playoff. Like Liberty, for instance, would have been in next year's 12-team playoff, and we saw what happened when they got on the field with Oregon. I mean, they just don't belong. So they might need to tweak that, you know, moving forward. But I'm all for more teams having that, that opportunity. Obviously, uh, and I saw somebody's comment. No, nobody likes Alabama, and I get that. And when people start liking Alabama, that's not Alabama fans, then that's a problem. We've had 7 national championships in my lifetime, and I will say this: we went further this year than what I had ever anticipated. And me and a lot of my Bama buddies, quote unquote, had talked the last few weeks and said, if we somehow pull it out and win the Natty this year, this by far would be the worst team that Alabama's had that's won a national championship, in my lifetime. The 92, '09, 11, 12, 15, whatever it was, 18, 20, all those teams, in my opinion, were easily quite a bit better than this year's squad. So I feel like we really did overachieve. Of course, I wasn't happy with that we lost and how we lost, but that being said, I guess we would have made it that far.
So is it safe to say, now granted, when you watch the Georgia Florida State game,
Mm-hmm.
obviously Georgia was playing Florida State's JV squad. There's no doubt about that. But having said that, it's pretty easy to say that Georgia went into that game wanting everybody in the world to know they should have been one of the 4, because even when they had a chance to take the foot off the pedal a little bit, they didn't, man. If they could have scored 100, they would have done it.
Yeah, and I really felt that was petty, and that was something that I can't tell you how many teams Bama could do that to every year. And we do everything in our power, Nick does, to just run right, run left, run middle, and not do things like that. Uh, and yes, Georgia was a fantastic team, but that being said, you ran your mouth all damn year about how great you was and how Bama didn't stand a chance against you. All you had to do was beat us. Just beat us. You're in Atlanta. 70% of the crowd is yours every time Alabama plays Georgia in Atlanta in the SEC championship game. You had your opportunity. And that was one game this year, even though Bama beat Georgia by 3, we whipped their tails on both lines of scrimmage. Our boys wanted it more. And I knew my guess was about 48 or 50-3 was going to be the Georgia Florida State game under all those circumstances. And I still feel like if Florida State's quarterback would have been healthy, I think they would have deserved to be in the playoffs. This was just a strange year to where legitimately you could have had 6 teams in the playoffs if Florida State's quarterback would have been healthy. I don't know. Like I said, moving forward, I'm excited about the 12-team playoff as long as we don't start getting some of these teams, push for to be in there, like the Liberties and things of that nature, because what Oregon did to them and what Georgia did to a very depleted, shorthanded Florida State team, it's going to happen over and over again in those playoffs. So I hope they tweak the system, before next year.
So what's the talk down in your neck of the woods now that the number one quarterback for Georgia decommitted from going to Georgia and he's going to Nebraska instead? That had to kind of hurt down there a little bit for the Georgia fans.
I know it did, but we had heard, college football recruiting here in the South is king. Just like college football is. We had heard quite a few rumors through most of the recruiting, bases, Rivals, and 247 Sports, and a lot of those big outlets that this was probably going to happen. I think the kid might have been a legacy kid. I think his father might have played at Nebraska, or he had some family ties there, and there was quite a few rumblings 3 to 4 weeks before signing day that was going to happen.
Yeah, so I was talking to Jersey about that when he decommitted and went to Nebraska. I said to Jersey, "So what do you think Nebraska had to pay to get him?" And he said, "Well, the going rate for a quarterback these days is about $1 million to $1.5 million." And I chuckled and I said, "Okay, if you think for 1 second that Nebraska got that quarterback for $1.5 million, I mean, you're leaving out the car, you're leaving out the house, you're leaving out the mom and dad's house, the 3 boats you're going to get on the Pacific, Atlantic, and Gulf."
I mean, isn't it kind of, to me, and I don't know how you feel about this because we haven't really talked a lot of college ball. I just feel like it's such a sad state college football's in. This is, I am very, very against what's going on with college football now. Very old school, I guess, mentality about it. $250,000 free education, books, stipend, this, that, and other ain't good enough. I'm one of those guys. And should the stipends have been increased? Yeah, but to sit there and say that a 17, 18-year-old kid, overgrown kid, is worth that kind of money, that's asinine at best.
Let that go. You got to let that go, Brett.
I've got to let it go, man, because it is what it is. But it don't make it right or wrong. It is what it is.
And I get what you mean by that. As our guest has arrived, but I understand where you're coming from. But when different universities and different colleges are throwing booster money at these guys all the time,
yeah,
they got to get a little piece of that. And we talk about free education, that's a whole nother subject. But
right.
I get where you're coming from. But that's what they focus on: football and basketball in these universities. And so,
and 95% of the athletic budgets are paid for by college football. And if anybody tells you any different, they're lying. The college footballs pay for the baseball and the basketball and the gymnastics, and at most schools, that is a fact. College football pays for those things. Now, in some areas, Kansas, North Carolina, Duke, it's a little bit different thing. But down here, in the SEC country, all your athletics budget is paid for because of football.
We'll see.
I mean, I think Alabama's program nets about $100 million a year after all of our salaries and expenses and this, that, and other. I mean, that's big money. That's big time money.
But don't you think that it was poor planning? Because I'm all for players in college. I mean, if they got to pay them, they got to pay them. But shouldn't they have figured this out and had, whether it's a college cap or whether it's something, but to all of a sudden having Marvin Harrison Jr. trying to make a decision on whether he goes pro or stays at Ohio State because Ohio State's willing to pay him $25 million. I mean, when you start getting
that's why Drew Timmy. Yeah, that's why Drew Timmy came back to Gonzaga last year, was because he was going to make more money from Gonzaga than being a second-round draft pick. That's a fact.
And the Clark for the Iowa Hawkeye women's team. She could have went pro. The only reason she went back to Iowa is because she not only was getting paid by Iowa, just like every other athlete, but she had endorsements with State Farm and you name it. I mean, and so, A-Train leaned back.
It's asinine. It's ridiculous. One kid drove up, and I've got an SEC group, and I couldn't help myself. To show him driving up in his $400,000 car to sign his damn letter of intent, and somebody's like, I'm so proud for that kid, and and he really earned that. And I said, whoa. I said, look here. I have had money before. I have been flat busted before. I've seen it all. And to sit there and say that 18-year-old kid deserves a $400,000 car because he's bigger, stronger, and faster than a lot of the people he's played against, I have a real problem with that, because most adults in their lifetime won't be able to own a car like that and be able to, raise a family and have a. Look, I really am. I'm not that big a hater. I do believe that those kids deserve more money, but a $400,000-$500,000 car to sign a letter of intent, and excuse my language, is bullshit.
And then just like that, we're gonna cut them off because we got to bring in our guest. Good grief! You just as bad as Ed, man. Ladies and gentlemen, the NFL.
Can you believe that he's bagging the host right now? What the?
Oh man, both of y'all getting bagged. Exactly. But I had to bring
in. Some people don't like the truth.
And guess what? You get to stay muted just for that reason, and him too. And I'm just bagging him as well. Bringing in our NFL writer for Phoenix Sports, and he's a Hall of Fame selector. Glad to have him on the program. I'm grateful to have him on because I get a chance to speak with him myself. Is my man Howard Balzer. Howard, good evening to you, sir. How you doing this evening?
Doing great. Enjoying the conversation.
Oh my goodness, they gonna go on for hours, man.
Won't solve a damn thing.
Oh, they're gonna go on and on.
And A-Train, we're elated because
college kids were getting cars that no one else could afford 30 and 40 years ago.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Now instead of being under the table, it's over.
Hey, I live in Tuscaloosa, 5 miles from the stadium. I know what's been going on.
I heard you enough in the last 5 minutes waiting. But bottom line is, the comment about there being no planning was the real problem, because the NCAA just sits back there and they're going to fight and they're going to fight and fight. And then all of a sudden it all gets thrown chaos because it's one of the courts. And then they have no clue how to control this, and it's running amok. And that's the real problem. But all right, let's talk about some other.
First up, hey, I got to ask you, got to get your thoughts, since we've been talking about college football so far, is, you saw the college football playoff. What is your state of mind thinking for this college football national championship coming up on Monday night?
I hope it's a great game, and it should be. I mean, as it turned out, with all the consternation and all the discussion and all the debate, number one's playing number two, and that's what's going to happen Monday night. We'll see how it all plays out. We saw two games going down to the wire, and one of them obviously went overtime, and then the other one, one last play. So hopefully it's like that on Monday night. I think it's a toss-up. I think both these teams are playing really good football, and we'll just see how it goes. So many times these games disappoint, and certainly last year's championship did. Hopefully this one won't. So
who you got, Michigan or Washington in this particular matchup?
Oh gosh, I left all my coins somewhere else in the house, so I don't have one to flip. But I don't know. I think it would be kind of fitting, if you will. And let's remember one thing about the other previous debate too, right? With all the players and all that. Look at just the chaos in college football, and what has been wrought by teams jumping everywhere and all that for money, obviously. And so everybody wants a piece of it. But I think it would be fitting that in the final year of Pac-12 football, which is almost criminal that this conference has just basically disappeared, that in the final year of Pac-12 football, that Washington would win. Might not happen that way, but I think that would be a fitting end to this season where we've seen so many crazy things happen.
Interesting enough. I like that. I like that. So, all right, let's. I'm gonna jump ship a bit to, of course, the UFL, because that's why we got our guy Brett on, because he's a USFL guy. I'm an XFL guy. Daddy Ed love football, so it don't matter who he's siding with. But I think he's more of an
That's
XFL
me.
guy.
Well, it doesn't matter now. It doesn't matter now. You know, the brilliant decision by these people sitting in a room and trying to figure this out for the last 2 months, and they come up with the name of a league that lasted about 2 years, however many years that was.
Oh my goodness!
People don't even remember the United Football League, right? But the
I
great
do.
Florida Tuskers
I do.
with Jim Haslett, you know, as the coach. But to come up with that name, that's the best you could come up with. Was a league that didn't make it about a decade ago. But I know they're playing on the whole thing. Well, it's United. You know, we're united now. Okay, well, we'll see. But you know, it's unfortunate that a lot of players aren't going to have spots now, and it was a little surprising in some ways, because all indications at some point seemed to be that it was going to be a 12-team league, but they decided on 8. But I think one key thing that hasn't been talked about a whole lot, and what I've been told, is that the reason they went with 8 is they wanted to have a nice, compact product, do as best that they possibly can with attendance and TV, because their goal is to increase from 8 in 2025 and beyond, and do it with owners. They are hoping to attract actual owners to teams rather than having the league own it all. And it's going to be very, very interesting to see if that goal is reached. But I think that's why they've decided on the model they did for this year, to attract ownership that would be willing to put in some money to this.
So you brought up something that's intriguing to me too, because you mentioned the fact that the Pac-12 is no longer, and not having a league in the West Coast is just asinine. What about the fact now that the UFL doesn't have any West Coast teams? I mean, the West Coast has got to really be feeling slighted. I mean, it's back-to-back college UFL now that West is not going to have a team in the mix.
Yeah, that's interesting the way it all developed. Now remind me, what last year with the 2 leagues, we kind of try to, you know, remember, well, what teams were in all these leagues. And we know that LA was in the XFL in the aborted 2020 season, but I'm trying to remember, where was it? Was there a West Coast team in the leagues last year?
In
Seattle,
2020,
Vegas and Seattle.
Yeah,
Seattle,
yeah,
there we go.
for sure.
Seattle, and then you could probably include Vegas.
Yeah,
So
Vegas.
those 2, yeah.
But,
so they had those 2 teams, and that was it.
Vegas was going to go away anyway, because when they were talking before all this merger stuff occurred, they had already decided that Vegas wasn't going to get a team. That was one of the most ridiculous things I've ever seen with where they were playing those games. I mean, that was, and they didn't have it, and they didn't even find that place until, not very long before the season started. So that one wasn't going to work there. Seattle, I'm a little surprised that they're not included in all this, but I would suspect, like I said, like I was alluding to, that if things go the way everyone is hoping for, that Seattle would be back in 2025.
Now, you said that because Brett has been licking his chops, because I know he was not a fan of the Vipers even being at where they were at all. And he had been speaking so freaking highly against it. He was so against it. And
I'll tell you a funny thing about Vegas. I lived there for a year and a half. And this was back in 94 into 95. Mm-hmm. And that was the year that the CFL decided to put teams in the United States. And there was a team in Las Vegas that was playing in Sam Boyd Stadium, an outdoor stadium, in the dead of summer in Las Vegas. And it was so ridiculous. The funniest thing I've ever seen, I went to 1 or 2 of their games, and they actually had all the cheerleaders had a very important job. And it wasn't to cheer. They were going around with those spray mist things, spraying people in the stands because it was so freaking hot. And plus, if I'm remembering correctly, that stadium had aluminum seating. And so only was it hot.
Oh my God.
They didn't play in the dead of daytime, but even if you struck in Vegas in July and August, if you're playing at 6 or 7 o'clock, it's still over 100 degrees. And so and so you're sitting on aluminum seats, and you have people spraying you just so you don't melt. I mean, that was totally crazy. So that's Las Vegas, football, as it were, when you're playing in these leagues. And I don't know, maybe I think it would be a good market for this league, but they just don't have a stadium to play in, and unless they figured out a way that it made sense to play in Allegiant Stadium, and that certainly didn't happen, obviously, last year.
That sounds a lot like Birmingham playing in the heat. But
Legion Field, aluminum seats, May and June, heat index of 100, no shade. That don't need to ever happen again.
Well, heat index of 100. People would give their left arm for that in Vegas, and where I am now in Arizona in the summertime. I mean,
I was in the casino business for 7 years, and I visited many clients in Tunica and Biloxi and places of that nature. And a lot of times the Vegas people would come out from the corporate offices. And I remember one time in Tunica, it was so brutal. And the guy had came in from Vegas. He was actually the marketing director for Boyd Gaming. And this was at Sam's Town Casino. And he said, "My God, how do you people do it here?" And I said, "What do you mean?" He said, "Well, I just checked with my wife. It's 117 in Vegas." He said, "I lived there my whole life." And he said, "I'd have 117 there than 90 degrees here in Mississippi." He said, "I don't know how you people do it." And I just laughed, and I said, "The humidity here, you can't breathe." He said, "Oh, by the time I walk to my office," he said, "I got to change shirts."
Yeah, well, the humidity is worse. I will give you that. But I'll tell you, like this past July here in Phoenix, which I'm sure was pretty much the same in Vegas, the average high for the month of July was just under 115. That was the average. That was the average. And the worst was that the average low, it never hit lower than 90. That was the low for every day. So
but that's dry heat, though.
It is, like I said, I will acknowledge that the humidity. I mean, you just can't even breathe in that. You walk outside, and you just, like you said, you just immediately start to sweat like crazy. When it's 115, you don't even really sweat that much. You really don't. But it's just ungodly hot. And you better get one of those windshield shields, those windshield deals
for your car.
You get into your car, sitting outside for a couple hours, you can't even touch the steering wheel for 5 minutes.
Hey, that's Texas heat. Texas heat is unbearable.
Yeah, Texas is brutal.
They are unbearable. I felt bad at times for the Houston Roughneck fans during this past year, during the XFL season, during April. It started really getting warmer, and it was like 85, and that was getting out of hand. And that's 85 degrees. And so, Texas heat is something not to play around with at all.
Mm-hmm.
So let me ask you this real quick about the merger. Do you think that this league even have any long-term ability to, remain as an effective spring pro football league, and then we can have something longer than 3 years like the USFL did in the 80s?
I hope so. I think it's good. It's good for players. Obviously, it's good for it's obviously opportunities for a lot of guys that wouldn't get it. The question is, though, can it be viable financially? And that's the big question. Can you get enough fans, to come out? Can you get good enough TV ratings where at least you can attract some sponsors? So, like I said, I hope that it can. I think one thing that would be important, and I this is another thing that I know they're going to work toward, hope to accomplish, is some kind of working relationship with the NFL.
Mm-hmm.
And I know that this year they're starting, they're not starting the season until the end of March, but they were almost forced to do that because it took so long to put this all together. I think they would like to probably start a bit earlier, maybe not as early as the XFL did in its 2 years of playing football. But to me, you have a perfect situation where if you can have an agreement between the NFL and this league, where all these guys that are on practice squads, that, some of them play during games, but most of them don't. You've got third quarterbacks on teams that virtually never play, mostly never play unless there's a lot of injuries. And hey, the great backstory is Kurt Warner, because Kurt Warner probably never would have gotten his NFL Hall of Fame, really. He never would have gotten his NFL career if a guy named Al Lukenbill hadn't approached the Rams. And Al was with the Barcelona Dragons in then the World League in Europe, and he wanted a quarterback that was on an NFL roster to be his quarterback, and so that he could say to the fans, "Hey, we got a guys on an NFL team on our roster." And so they wanted the Rams to sign Kurt Warner and then allocate him to the World League so he could do that, and that's exactly what happened. And we know the rest is history. So just think if you could do that more in this league with quarterbacks, offensive linemen, guys that just don't get game snaps in the NFL, and have these guys, once the season ends on Monday for most of the league, and then when the teams, they're signing guys from the practice squad to their, these reserve future contracts, but they don't do anything until April. I mean, you can't even, the off-season programs don't even begin until April. And then you have OTAs at the end of May and mini camps in June. Well, suppose you get all these guys that haven't hardly played and got experience, and not all of them, obviously, but have a bunch of them go to these spring league teams and get snaps, and then you can tell the local fans, hey, we've got 7 guys from this team, or whatever it might be. All of a sudden, you have a little more story to tell instead of just saying, hey, we got all these guys that don't even have jobs that are on our roster that are looking for opportunity. And I think if they can make something like that happen, it's not going to happen overnight, but it's just those little baby steps I think that you need to take to build something and stick with it. But that's going to be the key. Can they all stick with it while you're losing a pretty good amount of money, because we all know how expensive it is to run a football league, which is why, of course, they do the hubs, and everybody's practicing in Arlington, and then they go to the cities just for the games. Well, to me, you need all these teams in their own city to really be able to build a following and have the media be able to come out and do interviews with players and get to know them and all that. But you can't do that unless you're a little closer to being financially viable. If you had owners, then you have a better chance of doing that. But it also has to be owners that understand that it's going to be a long haul before you ever, even if you ever do, get a return on your investment.
Gotcha. Wow. That's a lot. Ladies and gentlemen, this is The Bottom Line. That's Brett. That's Daddy Ed, and that's our special guest, Howard Balzer, to the left. He's joining us from Phoenix Sports. He's an NFL writer for that, and he's also a Hall of Fame selector. You spoke about the Hall of Fame, and I definitely got to touch on that a bit. There are 15 finalists that had been announced just prior before the new year began, and I'm excited with especially one of them, Torrey Holt, of the St. Louis Rams. I hate calling them the L.A. Rams because that's what they are right now. I see that he has his Jared Allen jersey on as well.
What's the meaning of the 69? I don't.
It's a great number.
Ask that question, actually.
It's a legendary number. It's been around for years.
It has been since the inception of man. It has. But anyway, back to Torrey Holt.
We got our 15 finalists. If you could, I don't know if you can, because I know you do some selections too. But if you could think who could be the final group for, and I'm not saying this is your picks. I'm asking you who you think would be the final group for that will make the Hall of Fame when it gets to the NFL honors before the Super Bowl.
Can I have him hold up a minute on that?
Okay.
Just because before he goes into that, we know that you're one of the guys that has the vote for the Hall of Fame, correct?
Correct.
Could you give everybody, and even I would like to know, what does all that entail? How many hours goes into that? Do you guys get together and all get in a room? Do you mail in your votes? How does all that process work?
It is a lot of hours, and it's an ongoing process, really, for the entire year, almost, because after the enshrinement in August, we receive a list of a lot of players who have been nominated for the Hall of Fame. And right away you start. Now, granted, there's a lot of names on those lists that don't have a chance. I mean, anybody can nominate guys. You see some of the names on there, you're wondering why they're even on there, but they are. But you know who the guys are that are going to be seriously considered. And so you're always looking at it. We get that list, and then we vote in October for the top 25, which is announced in November. Then we vote on the top 15, which was due early in December, which was just announced. And then we'll get together later this month. We'll have our first in-person meeting. That we've always had an in-person meeting up, and then when that stopped with the pandemic, and then when NFL honors changed from Saturday to Thursday, that forced us to change because we would always meet on the day before the Super Bowl. Well, the radio people, all the selectors would be in the Super Bowl city, but Saturday was a slow day. There really isn't much going on Super Bowl related. And so that's when we had our meeting. Once it was moved to Thursday, it became impossible to have a meeting. And so we've met by Zoom this year. Like I said, we will meet before it's announced in NFL honors. And I'll tell you, that meeting that goes on, even on Zoom, wherever it is, it takes about 8 or 9 hours because we discuss all the candidates. There's a presenter for each of the 15 finalists. And for full disclosure, a lot of people know this. I am actually even though St. Louis doesn't have a team anymore, and they couldn't find a selector for Los Angeles, so I actually still represent the Rams as their selector. And so I will present the case for Torrey Holt as I've done the previous 4 years. And believe me, I hope this is the last year I have to do it. But heck, Rondé Barber got in last year, was the 6th time, I think, as a finalist. And Ira Kaufman, who is the Tampa Bay selector, had to present him every year. Year before that, I think it was the year before that, or 1 or 2 years when John Lynch went in. I think he was a finalist 7 or 8 times. So he's been a busy guy for all those years. But, those who don't, so that's extra work when you're a presenter, because you're always looking for new things to add to what you can say to hopefully get the guy that you're advocating for to get him over the top. But there is a lot of time spent on it. There is a lot of advocacy that goes on. In fact, I advocated a couple of months ago when it was the cut to 25. I actually did it for the first time last year when London Fletcher did not advance to the semifinalists for like the first 4 years of eligibility, I think. I said, this is ridiculous. He should at least be moving on in the process to at least be discussed among the committee. And so I advocated for him. A couple other people did. And he became a semifinalist. And he has been one for the last 2 years. So you hope that is moving him towards making it to the finals and getting truly discussed 1 year. But so like I was saying, it's a humbling thing to be part of it. There's a lot of time that's spent on it. And it's one of the hardest things I do every year, cutting down that list, picking the 25, then picking the 15. Then when we have the discussion day, we first reduce it to 10. And that's excruciating because you're looking at these 15 guys and you know that every single one of them is deserving of being in the Hall of Fame. And you're trying to make a gut feeling on everything you've heard, everything you've known, and what you know about these guys, and pick 10. And I know what bothers me sometimes a little bit is when the people who don't get in, and we know there's going to be 10 guys on this list that don't get in. And there'll be people saying, oh, those guys don't know what they're doing. They disrespected this play. Well, how have you disrespected someone by having him in the final 15? I mean,
so are you a liberal
honor just to do that? But to pick those guys, and then when you find out who the 10 are, and then pick the 5 that you might not pick the 5 that make it all the way, but you're picking the 5 that you think are the ones that should go in this year. And that is, boy, I always say that if everyone says this, okay, you go through the list and pretend like you were the one who's making the decision. Then tell me how easy it is. Well, it's not so easy, I guarantee you.
So are you at liberty then to speak on your thoughts on each player on a show like this, or are you really supposed to keep thoughts to yourself until the committee makes a decision?
Well, you can give some opinions. I like to go in with an open mind, which I always do. I mean, there's times when you end up voting for someone that you never thought you were going to vote for before the meeting. I remember however many years ago it was when Ricky Jackson, the great Saints linebacker, got elected. If someone had asked me if he was going to get in that year, I said, probably not. And he ended up, being elected. Sam Mills a few years ago, Leroy Butler, guys who have been waiting a long, long time. So while obviously it's clear that I have strong feelings about Torrey Holt, but all the other ones, I look at them all and I say, man, they're just all very deserving. And I've said this many times. You can pick. Someone did the mathematical equation of it one time, figuring out how many different combinations of 5 guys there are. I guarantee you go through that list, and especially this year, more so maybe a little bit than other years, where there's not of the first-time eligibles, which are Julius Peppers and Antonio Gates. I think they're both going to be in the Hall of Fame, but I don't think either of them are guys that you just say, oh, slam dunk, first time Hall of Famer. So that could open up spots for other guys who have been waiting. But the reason point I was going to make is you could pick any five you want out of that 15 and say, hey, that's a hell of a class. Then pick a different 5. Well, that's a damn good class too. Again, that just shows how good all these players are, but really in a lot of cases how close they are. And let's remember too, taking into account the different positions. You have 3 wide receivers, you have 3 edge rushers, you have 3 defensive backs, and so those engender comparisons of their own. Aside from when you're picking guys that there's only 1 running back or 1 tight end, whatever it might be. So all of those aspects enter into it in terms of who advances, and you never know how the vote's going to go. I'll give you one good example. Last year, there was a lot of discussion about the 3 wide receivers, Torrey Holt, Reggie Wayne, and Andre Johnson. And Reggie Wayne and Torrey were finalists for the 4th time, Andre Johnson for the 2nd. And when you get 3 guys in the 15, there's that thought that, hey, none of them got in last year. Torrey and Reggie hadn't got in the years before that. We've got to put one of these guys in. But I think a lot of people think that we get in there and say, okay, we need to put one in this year. Let's all decide which one it's going to be. That never has happened. I've been a selector for 20 years, a little more. That's never happened. So what happened last year, there was a lot of that discussion, and all 3 of the receivers made it to the reduction to 10. And so I thought to myself, I was so glad, because I figured, well, 3 made it to 10. One of them at least will make it to 5. Hoping it's Torrey, but if it's not Torrey, at least one of them gets in, and that only leaves 2 for the next year, right?
Right.
Well, none of them made the 5. Why is that? Most likely, obviously, none of them got enough votes to be in the 5, because some people voted for Holt, some people voted for Wayne, some people voted for Johnson, and it split the vote, and none of them got enough to advance. The flip side of that is the edge rushers. Last year, DeMarcus Ware got in. Jared Allen made it to the 10, but Dwight Freeney did not make it to the 10. So there were 2 edge rushers, right? And so made it to the 10. Well, obviously, DeMarcus Ware made it to the 5. There was only 2 guys to split votes with there. And so
Howard,
I've told people since then, I think if all 3 edge rushers had made it to the 10 and only 2 receivers had, I almost guarantee that one of the receivers would have got in and not one of the edge rushers. That's
why 5 though? Why just 5? Why just 5 Hall of Famers for?
Well, that's the number they've decided on.
That's like the committees you're saying is all chosen.
No, we don't decide that. That's the Hall of Fame. It used to be.
Wow.
It used to be only 4.
Right.
And then at some point, I don't remember how many years ago, they changed it to 5. And so
it's just wild to me, just 5 though.
Well, so also remember this too. We're also going to be considering 3 seniors, which that number's gone up because they want to try to. I mean, you look at that seniors group, and I'm part of the seniors committee also, not just the regular selection committee. You look at the list of guys who are seniors who are in there, and you're going, how did this guy not get in when he was in the modern day eligibility? And for years, they only put in 1. Then they changed it a little bit where it alternated years between 1 and 2. And then I think last year was the first year they went to 3 to try to get some of these seniors in. We call it the abyss, because once you get into that, who knows?
Can I ask though?
Yeah, when you're ever going to get elected?
Being
so 3 of those guys,
hold on.
coach contributor. So you have a potential class, which it was last year, of 9. So you get to the point where how many people are you going to have in a class? There's not even enough hotel rooms in Akron and Cleveland to put all the families and all the friends of these people.
No, there's not. I was intent.
I'm not saying that's why they don't do, they don't have more, because they have increased it over the last number of years, but they do want to keep it special and to have it really meaningful, and they just don't want to get. Now maybe that'll change sometime. Maybe that'll change because we suggest things.
Yeah, they don't want to water down.
Yeah, well, you don't want to water it down, and some argue it's already been watered down, because you have one level, and Deion Sanders said it. You have one level of those first time guys where you don't even have to have a presentation. Like a few years ago when Peyton Manning was a finalist, Mike Chappell, who's from Indianapolis, he's the selector for Indianapolis. He stood up and he said, "I present Peyton Manning for enshrinement in the Hall of Fame." And he dropped his mic and sat down. Didn't say a word. And the guy running the meeting said, "Any discussion?" No discussion. And we all love that because we didn't have to talk a half hour about a guy, right? Those are and some people think those are the true Hall of Famers. Once you get past them, if you have to debate for 40 minutes about a guy, are they really Hall of Famers? But even though you can get 5, there's a bylaw that says you have to put in 4 at least.
Wow.
So as you talk
Because
about,
they want a big weekend. They want a big weekend, right, to celebrate the whole thing.
That's right.
so you talk about the senior finalists and that you're involved in that. And answer me this, because I've been a Vikings fan for over 50 years, and the Purple People Eaters of the 70s.
I know what you're going to say.
What is the knock on Jim Marshall that he can't get into the Hall? Because if you look at the Purple People Eaters, Alan Page, Carl Eller, they're in. Jim Marshall, to me, was more a consistent, played, what was it? It was like 200 games or something consecutively. What is the knock on Jim Marshall that he can't make it in the Hall of Fame?
I'm not sure what the knock is. I haven't asked people, well, what's your thing with Jim Marshall? I don't know if people feel like, well, we've already got 2 defensive linemen, as you just pointed out, from that team. Are there really 3 Hall of Famers from that defensive line? And some might think, no, there's not. I mean, heck, Alan Page, I'm fairly certain if he didn't go in his first year of eligibility, he was in his second. Carl Eller, he was a finalist 13 times before he finally got in. Can you imagine that? Being a finalist all those years, and every year you're hoping for that phone call that tells you you've been elected, and they say, "Oh, wait till next year, Carl." 13 years he waited. So I think that's what hurt Jerry Kramer. I mean, Jerry Kramer on the Packers, I mean, he was a finalist 9 times in his modern day eligibility, was a finalist as a senior and didn't get elected in that, and then finally got in as a senior several years ago, and he had played his last game like 50 years before that, and he finally got in. I think sometimes when you have teams that have a lot of guys, there's that feeling, well, how many true Hall of Famers do they really have? And so there's a lot of people think on the Steelers that, L.C. Greenwood, should be in. And so people ask that about a lot of guys. Why aren't they in? I mean, Albert Lewis last year, to me, one of the best corners ever played.
Mm-hmm.
And last year he was a finalist in in his final year of modern day eligibility for the first time. He was never a finalist before that. And there was a thought, well, maybe he'll get elected so he doesn't go to the seniors pool. And he didn't, and Rondé Barber got in. Rondé Barber was a hell of a player. I personally believe Albert Lewis was a better overall cornerback than Rondé Barber. But those things happen. And there's no one answer to why is this guy not in? Why is that guy not in? I'm hopeful that the thing that's hurting Torrey Holt isn't the fact that Isaac Bruce is already in. Maybe it's hurting Reggie Wayne that Marvin Harrison is already in. There's not that many teams that have 2 receivers from the same team that are in the Pro Football Hall of Fame. And I often wonder, do guys think that, we got enough Rams from that greatest show on turf? But you keep putting them in the finals every year, and then you keep making them wait. This, by the way, is Torrey's 10th year of modern day eligibility. So he's halfway through his 20 years.
So he only gets 20. Okay.
So when you talk about all, defensive linemen, offensive linemen, wide receivers, been in the league over 10 years that are on the list, what kind of weight does it hold in your mind when you talk about special teamers like Devin Hester? that are only out there very limited time that have a handful of touchdowns. And when I say handful, for a special teamer, that's good. But really, in the grand scheme of things, they have a handful of touchdowns. Well, our co-host, one of our co-hosts, is a huge Bear fan, and he's losing his mind because he hears so many people say Devin Hester doesn't deserve to be in the Hall of Fame. What's your thoughts on Devin Hester?
That would be false. He belongs in the Hall of Fame.
What's that?
Bear down. He does belong in the Hall of Fame.
And here, but the thing with special teamers is hard because, and I've said this to people, this is now his third year as a finalist. And I was convinced last year after the presentation for him, he's getting in. The presentation was so good. Well, guess what? The presentations were just as good for the 14 other people. And so I do think that when people are casting that vote, and now they're picking between a guy who had an indelible impact, changed the game as a kick returner, but then people look at it and say, well, okay, but maybe he was on the field for 6 or 7 snaps a game, maybe, right? And now we're considering an edge rusher who played, 60 snaps a game. Most of the other position guys, most of them play every snap, or close to every snap. And so I think that enters guys' minds is that those guys are more deserving, even though I think Devin Hester is deserving. And if people didn't think he was deserving, as I mentioned before, he wouldn't be in the final 15. He wouldn't have gotten enough votes to get that far. But once you start whittling it down to the very end, all of a sudden it becomes a very, very tough thing. And I think back to however many years ago when Ray Guy was a finalist in his modern day eligibility, I think 7 or 8 times. Mm-hmm. Former great punter with the Raiders. He never got in as a modern day finalist. Then he got put forward by the seniors committee and he sailed in because guess what? When you voted for him as a senior, he wasn't taking the spot of anybody else. And I remember people saying at the time, oh, this might open the door for more punters and more kickers and guys like that. And I said, well, why would it open the door for him? Those guys are always going to go against those other position players. Now, Morton Anderson, the kicker, he went in several years ago, and I was, quite frankly, a little bit surprised by that one, that he jumped over a lot of guys that were every down players. So I do think that enters into people's mind. I do think that at some point, I don't know when it's going to be, who knows, maybe it's this year, who knows? But at some point, he will have been a finalist enough times where it's going to be, okay, we just got to put this guy in because otherwise we're just going to keep talking about him year after year after year. And so let's just get it done. But a lot does depend on who else is in the class.
Right.
I say maybe this year because maybe we won't have a first-time eligible guy get in. Julius Peppers, as good as he was, does he jump the line of edge rushers over Jared Allen and Dwight Freeney? Was he that far and above those guys to go in instead of one of them? I don't necessarily think so, but you never know.
Really?
There's 50 of us voting, and you never know what the other 49 people, are thinking. In fact, the thing about it is in all the discussions we have, I would say, I was thinking of keeping track of this one year. I would say out of the 50 people, and it was 49, it just went up to 50. But I would say of the 50 people, there'll probably be 30 of them, maybe 35, who will never say anything in the meeting about anybody. They just sit back and listen. So you never know what they're thinking, though, either. If they would come out and support somebody, they would say, oh, okay, that person likes that player or thinks they're very deserving. But you don't know what's in the minds of a lot of people who just don't talk in these meetings, and that's the reality of it.
Wow, I just sat here and I seen some of the comments, like Devin Hester was the best, or Dante Hall. Would that open up the door for a guy like Dante Hall to get into?
Dante Hall, Brian Mitchell. I mean, even go back to Billy White Shoes Johnson. Mm-hmm. A lot of those guys. Dante Hall could not hold a candle. Dante Hall was a good player. But Devin Hester did it on both punts and kickoffs.
Yeah, that's true.
Oh, my God. That shows my age. Billy White Shoes Johnson. God, I remember when I was at grade school watching him do his dance. It was awesome, man.
Yeah, totally. So, Devin, it was interesting the other day, Tuesday is coordinator's day. with the media with the Cardinals. And so the special teams coach was in there, a guy named Jeff Rogers, and someone asked the question, posed it this way. He said, with the way the rules are now, with the kickoff returns, will we ever see anybody like Devin Hester again?
Nope.
And he said, very, very unlikely, unless they would somehow, change the rules again. Very unlikely. Then he went into a thing on Devin Hester. Now, granted, he's a special teams guy, so he's going to support. But he said, I look at that list of finalists, and they're all deserving of the Hall of Fame. But he said, there's no one on that list that changed the game as much as Devin Hester. Because it wasn't only his returns. It was what teams then tried to do to take him out of those returns. And all of a sudden, you started seeing the directional punting. Oh, we're kicking it away from the guy. We're not going to kick it to him. That helped the team's field position a lot of times, because obviously he didn't return every kick he returned for a touchdown, and some of them he got stopped on. But when they kick away from him, all of a sudden the guy kicks it out of bounds at the 40 or whatever it is, and you just gained a bunch of field position. So that's what he said. And I asked him a question. You'll love this answer he gave. I asked a question, was he that good that, whether it was kickoffs or punts, whatever it was, that he was good enough just to beat the other team no matter what his blockers did? Now, maybe no matter. You always need a certain amount of help. But was he able to overcome any of that? He says, let me tell you something. He said, Devin Hester one time returned a kickoff for a touchdown when they had the hands team on the field thinking it might be an onside kick. So they had no blockers, basically.
Right.
They had no blockers on their kickoff return team, and he still returned one for a touchdown.
And I please mention, just speak on Devin Hester for just 1 second. I'm a huge defensive guy, special teams guy. I grew up a Alabama fan and a Chicago Bears fan. So defense and special teams is everything to me. And being in Alabama, where there's not very many Chicago Bears fans, when Chicago Bears were playing, and I was at friends' houses, relatives' houses, at bars, restaurant, when they saw Devin Hester come out on the field for a punt or kick return, and they started playing music, everybody around me started patting me on the head and giving me fist pumps and saying, here we go. Here we go. I mean, the whole bar or the whole, living room that we were in, everybody would leave their seats and stand up for a punt or kick return. That's how good the man was. He absolutely changed the game.
Yeah, there's no doubt. There's no doubt about it. And so
you never knew. I mean, anytime he touched the ball, I mean, he was unreal. He was unbelievable. And we've got to get the kickoff rules changed in NFL. I cannot stand the touchback. We've got to fix that. Special teams used to be such a huge part of the game of football, and I cannot stand what the NFL has done to the kickoff. All right, I'm done.
The kickoff.
I can't do it.
The NFL and the kickoff has become nothing more than a lead into a commercial, and all you see the kick returner do is go.
It's not the same. Every time they just stand there. They just stand there and do this.
I think we're going to see.
They don't even turn around. It's like Barry Bonds going to the plate, and he hits it 500 feet, and the center fielder doesn't move. I mean, they just do this every time.
I think we're going to see a preseason in the NFL. Of course, there's only 3 games, and the guys playing, maybe it won't be a real test. And maybe we'll have a test in the regular season one of these years, because I've heard there has been some rumbling and chatter about using the XFL kickoff rule to at least keep that return in the game and still having it be a safe play, where you don't have guys, flying down the field with 60 yards of momentum and just, players lighting up each other, which does lead to injury. There's no doubt about it. So I don't know when it's going to be. I think at some point we will see that, and they probably won't vote it in permanently. They'll vote it in for 1 year and then see how it goes, and then do the following year. But to me, what do you have to lose, really? I mean, what you have now is a league where it's 80 to 90% are just boring touchbacks.
Yeah.
Right. All right. Let's get into it. We got so far ahead of ourselves. We were supposed to get in with the week 18, but I'm gonna skip that and I got to ask you this since you've been covering. What has been for you the surprise story uh, of the 2023 NFL season for you?
Well, that's a good question. A surprise. I mean, there's always a lot of surprises. There's surprise teams, all that. I would probably say one of the surprise stories is obviously the Houston Texans, because this was a team that everybody was saying before the year, with the Cardinals having their own first round pick and having the Texans first round pick.
Mm-hmm.
Everyone was saying before the season, hey, Cardinals might have the first 2 picks in the draft because the Texans aren't very good. Well, they won 9 games, and they still have a chance to win that division. I think DeMeco Ryans, I don't know if he's going to win Coach of the Year, but he's going to get some votes. I don't think there's any doubt about that. That's been one of the surprise stories. The other one I would have to say would be the Cleveland Browns. I mean, here's a team that has played 4 different quarterbacks. They went into the season believing that Deshaun Watson was going to be their guy, and he didn't play well, and then he got hurt. And now they're playing all these different quarterbacks. They lose Nick Chubb early, and here they are with an 11-5 record. So, I mean, there's another Coach of the Year candidate in Kevin Stefanski, and they bring Joe Flacco off the couch. And granted, you have to give credit to Flacco, but hey, they figured, hey, why not? We'll take a flyer on him and let's see what he can do. And he's not even going to start this weekend because they've got their playoff spot clinched, and it doesn't matter what they do this week, whether they win or lose. So it'd be very interesting to see what they do in the postseason. So those are 2 teams that have been, have been a big story. I think the Chargers have been, because I don't think anyone thought they would be this bad. Because you figure, well, this is a team that has enough talent to at least challenge Kansas City in the division. And they've already changed the head coach, obviously, and who knows what direction they're going to go in there. So, as it always is in the NFL, why it's the king, because there's never-ending storylines throughout the league. I saw a story today that of all the sports shows in 2023, of all the sports events and everything on TV, the NFL had the top 56. I mean, that's just crazy. That's just crazy. But a big part of that is because of all the storylines, all the injured quarterbacks, and what teams have tried to do to overcome it. It's just must-see TV, and it's all going to start a week from this weekend when the playoffs open, and it might be as wide open as ever in terms of, I mean, certainly I think San Francisco and Baltimore are the cream of the crop in both conferences. But would anybody be surprised if they got knocked off by one of these other teams? No, I don't think anybody would be totally surprised. So who gets to Vegas, on February 11th?
Yeah.
It's going to be wild to watch it all, starting a week from this weekend.
Well, before Ed jumps up, because I know you got some, I got some real quick. But this is for Brett's case. Brandon Aubrey for the Cowboys, for the Dallas Cowboys. Right now, perfect.
Unbelievable.
And
it's not so much. I mean, it is a big part that he's perfect, but he's also hit a bunch of 50-plus yarders. And the other thing about him, and I haven't watched every game and every kick, but every time I've seen him kick, he never even comes close to missing.
No.
Every one is just boom, right down the middle. Whatever the snap is, whatever the hold is, it's boom, right down the middle. It's just phenomenal what he has done on field. And it's not like he's 20 for 20 on field goals or anything. What does he have, 34 or 35, I think?
Great.
Yeah.
That's insane. That's
about
insane.
13 or 48 and beyond, I believe.
What is it? 13?
I think 13 or 14 or 48 yards and beyond.
It could be. It could be.
Yeah.
Because I think he's got 8 of 50 or more, perhaps. But it's somewhere in there. I mean, those are crazy. And I'm here seeing one of the great kickers of all time, and Matt Prater, who set a club record. He has 9 50-yard field goals. And I think 5 of them are from 55 yards or more. I mean, the guy's just automatic. He's 39 years old. And people here say, well, you think he'll make the Pro Bowl? I say, what, are you kidding me? He's getting more votes than Aubrey? There's no way. In fact, I saw him last week. I talked to him in the locker room a little bit, and I said, can you believe what this kid in Dallas is doing? He just shook his head. It's just unbelievable.
Yeah.
I actually had the pleasure of meeting that kid in Canton before and after the game with the USFL championship last year. We were staying at the team hotel, and very, very nice kid. Very, we got pictures with him, hospitable. Hung out with him, like I said, after the game, on the sidelines and in the hotel, bar, restaurant area afterwards. Just an awesome kid. And that's what I love so much about spring football. You get to hang out with these guys, and actually you can form relationships with some of these dudes that they're not silver spoon guys. They're just trying to make it, and it's exciting and fun to see them further their career thanks to spring football, the USFL, XFL, and of course now the United Football League. And that's why I am such a huge proponent of spring football.
No doubt.
I'll shut up. Sorry, Arlington.
And I'll mention something to Arlington, because I know you're skipping over week 18, but I just did want to point out that with this weekend coming up, it starts in 2 days on Saturday. There are still 20 teams that have, and obviously some of them you say no way, but there are 20 teams that are alive to get to the Super Bowl. 5 playoff spots are on the line this weekend, and of course it all ends with the battle for first place in the AFC East with Buffalo and Miami. And it's kind of strange too. There's only 4 divisions have been decided out of the 8. Only 4 divisions have been decided. And the weird thing is, all 4 teams are either from the North and West divisions of their conference, all from the North and the West. And so, you got Detroit and Baltimore in the North, and you got Kansas City and San Francisco in the West. And all the other 4 divisions, all will be decided this weekend.
So who wins out of the AFC South? Who do you think is going to take it?
Man. Phew. I mean, they're all, what are they, all 9-7 now? So,
right.
And who's playing who? I think
Indianapolis and the Texans.
Yeah, Indianapolis and the Texans. So,
and then Jacksonville.
So at least we will have a team with 10 wins win that division. When last year only 9 won that division, and only 8 won the NFC South. Now it's still possible. Let's see, what do we got in the NFC South? We've got Tampa Bay at 8-8. Yep. We've got New Orleans at 8-8, and Atlanta at 7-9. And the Falcons
just like every year. It's that way every year.
It's crazy. It's crazy. And then that team's going to have a home game and play the number 1 wild card. So Dallas or Philadelphia is going to, as a wild card, is going to go on the road.
Wow.
To play that, that NFC South winner. And who'll be the I guess the number 2 wild card will probably be Miami. Well, if Buffalo loses, they might not even make the playoffs.
Playoffs, exactly.
I'm not sure who the number 2 wild card would be, but that team's going to have more wins probably than the AFC South winner, or maybe not if the 10-win team does it. But anyway, that's just the way they do things, and I've never thought it was the right way, but they're obviously not going to change it. But there's also right now, there's only 8 teams in the league that have 10-6 records or better. Only 8 of the 32. 15 teams are either 9-7, 8-8, or 7-9. And I call that part of the league the middle muddle, right? Because they're all either 8-8 or 1 game from 8-8, 9-7 or 7-9. And I know everyone always says, well, if you're 9 games, you're 2 games over 500. Well, really not. If you played 16 games, 500 is 8-8. So you're really only 1 game over what 500 would be. So that 9-7 team, obviously, if one of those teams had lost a game they won, they'd be 8-8. If those 7-9 teams, if they won a game they lost, would be 8-8. So that's the middle muddle. And that's the way it kind of always is. There's always a bunch of teams right in there. But it also gives hope to everybody. Because you look at some of these teams that won 4, 5, and 6, and they look at it and they've struggled, they've had issues, whatever they might be. But they say, hey, if we can just be around 500 and improve on that one step next year, you're around 500 with 2 or 3 weeks to go, and you're still alive. You're still alive in the postseason. And that's what keeps everybody engaged when coming down the stretch. You have so many teams that still have a shot of playing when the regular season ends.
All right. Go ahead.
I got I want to talk about the great debacle of the league for the year, the biggest disappointment. And to me, I call it the modern era Herschel Walker trade. You've got Denver, who trades with Seattle for Russell Wilson. And just bear with me for a minute because I got to kind of set the stage. And they give up 5 draft picks for Russell Wilson. They give up a 2022 first and second, a 2023 first, second, and fifth. They trade 3 players, Drew Lock, Noah Fant, and Shelby Harris, to which Seattle takes that draft pick, and they get Devon Witherspoon, who's a Pro Bowl cornerback this year. Okay, what did Seattle end up losing by getting rid of Russell Wilson? They had to put Geno Smith in, a quarterback who arguably had just as good a season as Russell Wilson did. So Seattle basically got a haul for nothing. So then 1 year later, after they've given up all that draft stock, they bring on Sean Payton. They give up another 2023 first-round pick. They give up a 2024 second, plus another future third-rounder to be named later. They pay Sean Payton. They said his contract runs through 2027. They're paying him between 17 and 20 million a year. Plus, Nathaniel Hackett, that they just fired the year before, they got to pay him another $3 million a year over the next 4 years. So then, if that's not enough, before the season starts, they give Russell Wilson a $245 million contract extension before the season even starts. So then what happens after you've given up a total of 3 first-round picks, 3 second-round picks, a third-round pick, a fifth-round pick, plus 3 players for Sean Payton and Russell Wilson? It's a complete dumpster fire, to which at the end, before the season's even over, Sean Payton comes up to the podium and says, oh, by the way, we signed this Jarrett Stidham for 2 years, $10 million. We really like him. We're going to bring him in. He's going to be our new starter. So you're basically telling the world that you've give up 8 draft picks, 3 players, over $400 million to go to a quarterback that's a 2-year, $10 million contract. If that's not the biggest crippling debacle of any NFL team next to the Minnesota Vikings in the Herschel Walker trade, I don't know what else is. So I just want to get your thoughts on that whole thing.
Well, I'm pretty sure that contract he got was last year. It wasn't this year. But yeah, it was crazy what they did. Obviously, they thought that he was going to be a difference maker. It didn't turn out that way. I don't know that anybody was criticizing it that badly when it happened, but obviously it hasn't worked out for them. What they're going to do going forward is the big question. The thing that's amazing to me is that after losing a game 70-20 or whatever the score was earlier in the year to Miami, they bounced back and played pretty solid football, and they're 8-8. So it might be in the minds of many a dumpster fire, but they're not 3-13. They're 8-8, and they were still in the playoff hunt until last week when they did win. And granted, Jarrett Stidham didn't set the world on fire, but they did win the football game. So I think Sean, we'll see where it goes from here, what they do next, especially at that quarterback position. But you have a team that won 8 games. Sean Payton's a pretty good football coach. Obviously, would a lot of other teams have paid him $20 million a year, whatever it was? Probably not. But the guy's won games. He's been a winner, and he knows quarterbacks. And so that will be one of the more fascinating stories of the offseason is what the Broncos do at that position. But they obviously feel they've got something to build around because, like I said, they're 8-8. So you can't really find fault with the way that team has battled and fought and got themselves back into the playoff race when they were off to a horrendous start.
But as they talk about, and I don't know if it's next year or the year after that, they're saying Russell Wilson's contract is going to count $50 million towards the Broncos salary cap.
Yeah, well, we have to see how they're going to shed him. If they do next year, you have to believe they will. But yeah, they're going to have dead money against the cap. And I'll tell you one thing about Sean Payton. He's had a lot of experience when he was in New Orleans on teams that had a lot of dead money.
Do you
Because
think
every year you go back and look, and almost every year they were cutting 5 and 6 guys in February because they were so far over the salary cap that they had to cut guys just to get down to the level of the cap and didn't have space. So yeah, they're going to have, if he's not there, they're going to have a bunch of dead money. But he's used to doing that, and he'll try and build a roster that will compete, which they did this year. And I think they'll probably be. I'm not going to say they're going to be really great in the long run, but they'll probably be pretty good because the cap keeps going up, and it's going to be around what everyone's thinking. It's going to be around 240 million next year. So teams are taking on more and more dead money because of that if they want to shed contracts from their roster.
So in your opinion, do you think Russell Wilson still has some good years left in him with another team, or do you?
He might have a couple. I mean, I think he's going to be 35, if I'm not mistaken. And a lot with the quarterback depends on. I mean, they didn't have a whole lot of. They were a pretty conservative team on offense, and a lot will depend on where he goes, what kind of team do they have. I think with the right players around him, he can play competitive football, and he played competitive football this year. I mean, his numbers aren't great, but they're pretty good. He didn't throw interceptions. He didn't make mistakes, and he played good enough football to get them a whole bunch of wins when they looked like they were in the tank. And who knows, might not win many games the whole season. So the question is what teams will be interested in him. I don't think there's going to be teams lining up at your door, but it only takes one or two that are interested and think that you can do something with
The
him.
Raiders.
But he'll
I like Vegas. In this case, Sierra, she can start a residency over there, so that way Russ can play while they're there in Las Vegas. I can see that happening if they choose to officially move on from Russell Wilson. This is for you, Brett. The question came up, but what do you think if Skip Holtz had get his adopted son Alex Mago back off the Green Bay Packers practice squad onto the Birmingham Stallions? That's for you, sir. What do you think about that?
I know, Brock. What's up, bro? Look, Daddy Ed keeps messing with me every day about my Stallions. That we roll deep. We're about 130 deep from what Daddy Ed keeps saying. So I got between Jamar and probably about 6 other quarterbacks we got stashed away. I think we'll be all right in the upcoming season.
Right.
Again in Birmingham and Alabama, when it comes to football, we roll deep, baby.
Oh, look who finally decided to show up. Just was about to leave the show.
Oh, too bad you missed out on the Devin Hester conversation.
Let's give me one more question here because I got to roll, guys.
Yeah, we got to get him out.
Oh,
you got
can
a
I-
question for him?
I do.
Okay.
I do. This is a confessional for you, okay?
Oh,
Back in 2001, 2002, I believe you was it 590 The Fan, or what was your station that you was sports guy for the Rams back in 01, 02, 03?
Probably I might have been KTRS back then.
Oh,
Okay.
Wow.
Because the year after the Super Bowl, I went over to 550, and that was for 2000. And I think I was there for a few. I mean, I was at 590 so many different times. I've lost track of which years it was.
Exactly. Because I worked with him too.
So here's why I asked that. Back in 2001, we took a transfer for a job. We lived in Northwest Iowa. I was a season ticket holder for the Vikings for years. I drove to the Metrodome, never missed. So fast forward, we moved down to St. Louis in 2001, when arguably the Vikings were, they were just coming off their best years, but they were up there. And who was their biggest rival in the playoffs? It was the Rams. So being a stand-up guy that I am, I'm going to confess to you, Howard, that I was not, when I moved to St. Louis, I was not your biggest fan. In fact, when I told my wife this morning that I was going to be interviewing Howard Balzer, she goes, "Why does that name sound familiar?" And I said, "Well, he was the Rams sports guy back in the early 2000s." And she goes, "Ooh, you didn't like that guy." But anyway, now I wish back then that I would have taken the time to get to know you, because I can honestly say in the last hour and a half, it's been a pleasure talking to you, because I just love picking brains, and I wish I would have given you the time of day, because back then I didn't think much of you. I thought you was nothing but a Ram homer, but I'm sitting here today regretting that and not taking the time to get to know you. That's all I got to say.
Well, I appreciate that. I was going to ask you what your beef was, and it's funny you said that, because I would get that a lot of times, right? And and I always felt it was because of this, because when they weren't playing well, and of course in 2001 there wasn't. I mean, what could you find fault with? And certainly when they went to, but when they'd have a bad game, of course everybody would be jumping off the bridge and going crazy and acting like everything was wrong, everything was bad. So I would go down a list of all the things that they did bad, and then I mentioned, but what did look good in this game was this, and then people go, "There he is again, defending the Rams," right? And I said, I'm not defending the Rams. I mean, it is possible that even when you lose a game, that there were good things that happened in the game. But I know in a fan's mind, they just have that, they have that kind of tunnel vision sometimes. And I got labeled that many times. But I always thought that I was, in my own heart, I felt I was always pretty fair and balanced. And when it was time to criticize, I criticized. When there was something to talk okay about or good about, then I did that. So, but I appreciate the comments.
I think if I look back now, being more wise and older, I would say that a lot of it probably evolved around jealousy. So,
Well, Howard,
well, then you must have been jealous of a lot of people then.
I've only been here for 30 seconds, and I love the guy.
Well, I used to watch Kurt Warner when he was an Iowa Barnstormer. I'd drive to Des Moines and I'd watch him play for the Iowa Barnstormers. So I always liked Kurt Warner, but it was rough living in St. Louis, being a Vikings fan, knowing that every season was going to come to an abrupt end at the hands of the Rams.
Well, Howard, thank you so much, man, for coming on and
pleasure,
chatting with
guys.
us and giving us a lot of insight and enlightening us with many, many stories, and especially this whole Hall of Fame process. You kind of gave us a way better insight than anybody else could have ever done. And you always welcome to come back on the program, because you always a delight coming on the show. And I'm grateful that I got a chance to talk with you today as well.
Well, I appreciate that. Hopefully, maybe we can meet up after the Super Bowl, and we'll have good news on Torrey Holt. And I will tell one last quick story before I leave. In our last in-person meeting was 2020 in Miami, and I was presenting Isaac Bruce, and all of a sudden 2 weeks before the meeting, I learned that Torrey Holt was also a finalist. And I didn't expect that. I didn't think he would become a finalist until Isaac got in. And I'd already presented Isaac a couple times before that. And so now all of a sudden I had to scramble and get a presentation together for Torrey. And how do you do that when you've now been presenting Isaac Bruce, right? And now you've got to present not only a guy from the same team, but from the same position. How do you do that and advocate for them both, right? It was a tough position to be in. And the other part of it was, prior to that year, the Hall of Fame, the presentations were always done in random order, but by position. So if there were three wide receivers, we talked about all three wide receivers, one right after the other. And then, of course, the conversation would spill into comparisons. Well, that year, they decided to do it totally random, with just guys all over the place. So all of a sudden, I find out a week before the meeting, maybe even less than that Torrey was I think either the fourth or fifth person in line, and Isaac was like 13th or 14th, right? Mm-hmm. And so I've got to present Torrey first. If it had been alphabetical order by position, it would have been Isaac and then Torrey, and then someone else would have done Reggie Wayne, who was a finalist that year. So anyway, I do my presentation for Torrey, do it what I thought was very good justice. And my first question from someone, one of the selectors, is, well, who do you think was better, Isaac Bruce or Torrey Holt? I was like, you gotta be kidding me. They're both Hall of Famers. But then I said this. I came up with it pretty quickly. I said, but you guys already decided that, because Isaac's been a finalist. Isaac's been a finalist already for a few years, and Torrey hasn't. So this room has already decided who they think is better, right? So take it from there. But I said they're both Hall of Famers. Then the discussion ensues, and it turns into a whole debate about Torrey and Isaac, and guys talking about Isaac and guys talking about Torrey and this and that, and it goes on, I don't know, 15, 20 minutes. Finally, it ends, and David Baker, who was then the president of the Hall of Fame, says, Howard, final words. I give my final words, and he says, we thank Howard for his presentation of Isaac Bruce. Because most of the conversation was how Isaac was a bit ahead of him, which the decided, right? We then had a break after him or the next person, and we're all going, hitting the men's room and getting something to drink or whatever. And several guys came up to me and says, I think that's the first time you made a presentation for one guy and got another guy elected.
Exactly. Ain't that nothing?
And we didn't know I would get elected at that point. But I said, hey, it wasn't me. It was where the discussion went. And then later in the thing, I had to do my presentation for Isaac. And of course, he does, in fact, get in. But to put the final bow tie on that day, and what a day it was, and how emotional it was, because I was finally going, I don't have to do that presentation again. And I just felt so good for one of the great guys I've ever met in Isaac Bruce. Well, went out to dinner with some people afterward. One of them, in fact, was Mike Jones, and had a really good evening. Went back to the hotel where a lot of people were staying, and it was about 1:30 in the morning. I I was staying at an Airbnb, and I had to, get an Uber back there, and it was getting pretty late. But I knew the game was the next day, and it wasn't starting till late. So, but anyway, I'm standing outside looking at my phone at the Uber, and all of a sudden I hear Howard, and I look up, and there's this big, I think it was an Escalade. There's this big Escalade, and Orlando Pace is sitting in the passenger seat. And so I look, oh, hey, Orlando, how you doing? He says, hey, Howard, what's going on? He says, but what? You couldn't get it done? So I'm saying, what are you talking about? He says, you couldn't get Torrey Holt elected? That's what he said to me. And I'm thinking, what is he?
Wow.
Well, guess what? Torrey Holt was in the back seat of the car.
Yeah.
And they had just come from Isaac's house, where he had had a little celebration with his family and the whole bit. They had just come from there. And so Torrey got out and was laughing, and all that. And obviously I've talked to him a lot in these ensuing years. And man, I'm just, like I said earlier, I'm just so hopeful that this is the last year that I have to present him. But man, it's tough. It's tough. At least with Isaac that year, well, it was Torrey, but there was no other wide receiver. Well, yeah, I guess Reggie Wayne was. But that was his first year of eligibility also. And Isaac had been a finalist, I forget, maybe 4 or 5 years.
Yeah.
At that point. So anyway, we'll see what happens.
Howard,
I
want to say one thing to you. If you could do that same presentation from a man, Devin Hester, I'd be happy if you can make that happen.
Well, I told those guys earlier that the guy Dan Pompei from Chicago is the guy who's made the presentation for him the last 2 years, and he's done a phenomenal job. He's done an unbelievable job. And I mentioned before you popped on, that especially after last year, which was his second year as a finalist, when his presentation was done, and not only the presentation, but all the discussion about him, I was convinced he was going to get in. I said, he's getting in this year. I absolutely thought that. And I don't remember what order he was in the progression, but there was a bunch after him. And then after each presentation and discussion, you're going, oh, that was a great one too. Oh, that was a great one too. Then all of a sudden you start realizing how hard it is to separate all these guys, because they're all deserving, all 15, which is what I said to the rest of the guys, earlier in this conversation. And we'll hear it again, for Devin, and we'll hear it for all these other guys also. And there's Torrey and Reggie Wayne have been a finalist the most times of anybody in this group of 15. They've both been finalists. This is their 5th year as a finalist. No one else has been a finalist that many times. So we'll see if it means anything. Who knows? Because remember one thing, in 2 years, guess who we're going to be talking about in this room also? Larry Fitzgerald.
Oh my gosh, that's right.
Wow.
He becomes a first-time eligible.
That's right.
And so I know a lot of people are going to be saying, hey, if we don't start clearing out these receivers, then Fitzgerald's going to come in, probably a first-time eligible enshrinee, and that pushes guys back even more. So we'll see how it all plays out. But
we've talked about it on this show, and it's like I've just always said, I know it sounds like I'm a Homer Bears fan, but I mean, Devin Hester was a special teams. He was the game changer on special teams.
He was. There's no doubt about it. Absolutely no doubt about it. And everybody realizes that. Everybody understands it. And the one thing I say, though, as I said before, is that this notion that we don't respect guys who don't make it to the Final Five, it is absurd on its surface. And anyone who would think about it would realize it's absurd, because if we didn't respect certain guys, they wouldn't be in the Final 15.
You're correct.
They wouldn't make it this far. And that just shows the level of respect there is for what he did in his career.
Yeah, definitely.
Well, thank you so much, Howard, for coming on, man. And you have a great night, okay?
You too, guys.
Thank you very much.
Happy New Year to you.
Thanks, Howard.
We'll do it again.
Yep.
All right. Howard Balzer, ladies and gentlemen, from Phoenix Sports. And, man, we got a lot of great insight from him tonight, on especially college football playoff, his thoughts on the UFL, of course, and the Pro Football Hall of Fame process, man. Like, it takes a lot to select 5 people to say, hey, these 5 are deserving to be in the Hall of Fame. And then, of course, with the senior committee as well. Man, just mind-blowing, man, that he has to go through all that type of stuff to, find the best picks and to, say, hey, these are the guys that we want to put in Canton for this year's Hall of Fame class.
First thing I thought of when Eric popped on was, woo! I'm sure glad he didn't hear Howard say how much Iowa State sucked. But no, just kidding. He didn't say that.
I'll give you a little insight on Coach Beck's son Rocco. He now holds over Brock Purdy the most passing yards in a game for an Iowa State quarterback at 446. Just throwing it out there.
Do you know that I've actually seen on Facebook that there's people that are hoping that somehow Coach Beck's son can be a quarterback for the Battlehawks? There's actually people saying that.
I don't know.
He's not. Is he a freshman or is he a sophomore?
Yeah, he's a freshman. He's a true freshman.
Oh well, he can't. It wouldn't happen. It can't happen. But
no.
Well, he'll get a couple more years experience under his belt.
He's legit, man. I'm telling you. I don't know what, it's too early to say if he's a Brock Purdy or somebody like that. But I'm telling you, I watched his growth. I watched every game this year, and I'm telling you, from game 1 to now, that kid has grown a ton, man. I'm excited to see where Rocco goes, man.
AJ is going to be our quarterback for like the next 5 to 10 years. So
yeah.
So Brett just know.
Hey,
would you
I just got back on after my drive. Did we have the Alabama discussion? Did we already talk about
a little
that?
bit.
Feel free, Eric, to ask any question about
Fire
that
away,
we didn't touch.
Well,
Fire away.
I was so conflicted because I thought, I said it could go either way. We could either see Alabama and Texas, a rematch, or we could see Michigan and Washington. My heart wanted Michigan and Washington, but my head told me, well, it's going to be Bama and Texas. I'm glad my heart won out. I mean, I'm not a real big Crimson Tide fan, but I just want to know, Brett, did you enjoy that game, or was there something about it you didn't like?
Well, being an Alabama fan, I'm so used to being, victorious anyway, so you can't win them all. But honestly, what I had mentioned to them earlier before you got on was, the amount of championships and teams we've had in my lifetime. If we were to somehow pull that out this year, in all seriousness, this was by far our weakest team to make it that far. I really never anticipated us, especially after the first 2 or 3 games this year. Me and most of the locals here, we figured we were a 3 or 4 loss team. So we did so much better than what we really anticipated. And I just kept telling myself, I don't know if Michigan will beat Alabama or if it will be in the championship game, but I just never really thought we were good enough this year.
Well,
I mean, and it proved to be correct.
Well-
Not to interrupt, but did you see that comment over there, Eric?
Something
to the effect that Purdy is not ready for the playoffs.
Oh my God, this guy! I mean, you know what? I'm getting so sick. You know what? I can give you a whole laundry list of quarterbacks, really good ones that have never done what Purdy did this year. You know what? After this year, Purdy may be terrible, but you know what? His resume is his resume to this point. Right now, through the first 21 games of a career, Purdy's numbers are all better than Joe Montana's. I'm not saying he's Joe Montana, not by a day, because Joe Montana has a career, he's established it. But right now, if everybody wants to keep bagging on Purdy and saying he can't do this, he can't do that, well, he's doing it. So I guess it is what it is. Do you think San Francisco would be where they're at if they had Jimmy Garoppolo? No. So Purdy has an impact. We'll see what happens, but I'm telling you right now, I was watching the debate today on the Speak, and Shady McCoy was 100% on the Purdy bandwagon, and he's like, listen, they were like, oh, it's Dallas this and Dallas that, and Shady goes, hey, guess what? What's Dallas done? What has Dak Prescott done when he faces Purdy? Like, well, he faces the San Francisco defense. Listen, we're talking head to head. Purdy has dominated Dak Prescott when they play head to head. So I guess it is what it is.
So let me tell you what you cost me, Eric. Okay.
All right.
The great Karnak was 2 for 2, ready to go for number 3. Purdy had a bad game. Now he cost Christian McCaffrey the MVP. So now, just listen to me now. So instead of being able to say the great Karnak is 3 for 3, I'm going to have to sing that old song that everybody remembers. I guess 2 out of 3 ain't bad.
I'm telling you.
That's what I got to sing now, because Christian McCaffrey would have been the MVP, but Purdy blew it. So now 2 out of 3 ain't bad.
I'm telling you right now. You have too much vodka in that cup. If you thought a running back was going to win the MVP, it wasn't going to happen. We can sit here and debate whether running back should or not, but I'm telling you, this has become, unfortunately, it's become a quarterback award. Because if you look at all the teams, they never say, oh man, if we only had a running back, this team would be amazing. The Bears have never said, geez, if we just had a running back, we'd be great. It's about the quarterbacks. So as much as I love Christian McCaffrey, he was never gonna win it. He still hasn't jumped Brock Purdy for the MVP race yet, according to Vegas. It's Lamar Jackson, and somehow they have Dak, and then Brock Purdy, and then Christian McCaffrey. It's just not going to happen.
Hey, Trey, does that count as a rant? Have you done an Eric rant?
I think it did, but it's not his. It's not yours. It's his.
It's mind blowing that a football.
What do you think,
like you,
Brett? What do you think, Brett?
I'm not getting in this family squabble.
It's just not going to happen.
While we're all here, we're all UFL guys, and one of the main things that we're seeing now is this dispersal draft is coming out on this Friday. Please take that cigarette out your mouth, dude, while we doing this show. Hey, I've been wanting to say that all night, and I'm like, dude. But anyway, the dispersal draft is Friday.
Man, it's good and bad of every host. Nobody's perfect.
Jesus, right? The 15th. We got the 5th coming up with the music draft.
You're going to drop ashes on his head.
Hey, Trey, what are you talking about?
Hey,
we all have our bad stuff, right?
He forgot what can happen at the drop of a dime, so don't play with me. Don't play with me, dude. This is not this type of show, okay?
He's only muted me like 37 times thus far.
Counted every time I muted you. How did you even know that I was doing that? but you already know what the game is and how it goes because this is what we're doing here tonight. But anywho, we said that the special draft is going to be on the 5th, this Friday coming up. And then we got there's another draft that's supposed to be coming out on Monday the 15th. And then we're supposed to be getting some type of news. I'm not giving no speculation, but there's something big that's supposed to be going on Monday the 15th. I think there's supposed to be some type of schedule. Hey, have you got your tickets yet for Arlington versus Birmingham to start the season? Are you going to be in Arlington that very first game, Brett?
I don't know yet. I don't know. I have my Birmingham tickets, of course, for the home games. I've already had some people reach out to me about coming to Arlington. I've been so under the weather for a couple weeks. I had that family stuff that's happened. I really don't know what's going to happen with me in the next couple of weeks. So I would love to come. I came to Arlington, what was it, last year for the town hall?
Mhm.
I can't make any promises, but I would absolutely love to.
Yeah, so I
Not
mean, March
only
30th.
not
So
only are we going to that game, we're doing a show from Arlington that weekend.
oh yeah.
That's cutting edge stuff right there.
Oh boy. I'm
Are
looking
cigarettes allowed?
no, hell no. Still ain't allowed in the day. But anywho, I think a lot of us now. I'm very applauded with the whole thing with the XFL versus the USFL. I've seen the interviews with Daryl Johnston, Russ Brandon. They've all said pretty much the same thing. It's healthy competition now that we got an XFL group going against a USFL group. And granted that now you, Brett, on the USFL side, because we're gonna I still think it's gonna be an XFL versus USFL. It should be this way. There's nothing wrong with the competition, but now you guys have gained the Houston Roughnecks as now part of the USFL side. And listen, I'm all for this healthy competition. Like seriously, this is everything. I think they're going in the right direction. I know I've downed it in the past, but I think now we're headed into a direction where we can start getting more teams. And I'm ready, like what Howard said earlier in the show, is getting owners into this mix. I'm
Yeah,
ready for
yeah.
there's to be a long term live. This could really go long term, but again, I think the
I've been extremely pumped. I think
yeah,
there's so many resources now in place, and all these hands are together. From Fox, Redbird, Danny, Dwayne. There's just so many. We're all in this together, and I think the quality of play this year is going to be absolutely fantastic. Uh, I really think we'll be talking about this league, barring some colossal. I don't even want to jinx it because it's spring football, and we all know the history in the past. We could very well be talking about this for years and years to come, and it's very, very exciting. I am so for this merger, and I'm so ready to put the XFL versus USFL nonsense to rest. Now you might have separate divisions and all that, but we're now all in this together. All of us fans, we all want it to succeed. You know what I mean.
Yep.
We
yeah.
are all the resources are now in place. So let's do the damn thing.
Now it's about the game. I'm about to get on you for that drink too, man. At least you're
I'm
gonna have
going to tell
some
you. I'm
water.
going to tell you this, Brad. I think you're right, but I do think that
Go ahead.
we all need to support the spring league, no matter what team it is, whether it's Birmingham, St. Louis, whoever. But I think the competition part of it, the pitting the leagues against each other,
Yeah.
it's not that we can't support each other, but the pitting the leagues against each other, I think, is going to add another layer to the game that I think is going to make spring football exciting to watch and exciting to follow. That maybe even more so than maybe what it didn't have last year, just being the XFL or just being the USFL. I think by adding that little layer, it's going to add some more excitement. I can't wait. I mean, I can't
me
wait.
and Ed talked about this on this show. What was it, Ed?
You start cutting
We
out.
thought, what would be ideal is to have an XFL division and a USFL division or conference. And I can't believe they actually, they did the right thing. I would love to know the behind the scenes info, and I'm sure eventually we'll get to some of that intel. But I'd love to know who the other 4 teams were going to be, because we've all heard there for quite a while that it was going to be 12. and then just all of a sudden it went to 8, and that ended up sticking. I'd love to know who those other 4 teams were, and if we're anticipating those to come back kind of immediately. You know what I mean? I know on the USFL side they were real close to a lease agreement in New Orleans with the Breakers, so I feel like that was one of the teams.
Well, we
And
know
Seattle was
Vegas.
You know
another
what,
team.
bro? I'm glad you said that, Brett. I'm glad you said and brought that up.
Me and you.
Really, I should be singing, because 3 out of 4 ain't bad.
Oh my God. I think I have an idea of what teams that the 4 teams that Brett may be mentioning. We can look at, and no disrespect to Vegas, no disrespect to of course, well, Houston is remaining, but you're looking at Seattle and Orlando on the XFL side, and you mentioned New Orleans. I think the other team would have been either Philly or New Jersey. I think Philly
Yeah.
probably had better success than New Jersey did, and I think if you have on 2 teams upper east, DC and Philadelphia would have been perfect for that. And then you got on the southern end, you had Orlando, and what was the other? New Orleans. That would have been perfect
Yeah.
over there on the south side of that. And then
Yeah.
Seattle would have been the lone wolf on the West Coast, but that would have been the hard part. Because
It's
if you look at all the teams, it's the Midwest into the East.
it's
Which
too
Yeah.
bad
makes it
Seattle wasn't located in Oklahoma.
But
If
I'll
Seattle would
ask,
have been in Oklahoma State, they would have been.
I'll
They'd
ask
have
you
been
guys
in
this.
like Flynn.
I'll ask you guys this. What do you think it's going to take? So, do you think a successful year this year, or maybe 2 years in a row, brings on 4 more teams? Or do you think we're going to have success, maybe get to an ownership situation before we really take, to 12 or to the 16 to get the original leagues back? What do you guys think? I have an
You're gonna
idea.
have to go back to the beginning of the show when Howard mentioned about that exact thing that you're talking
Yeah.
I
about
wasn't
right now.
here. Come on. I
No,
wasn't
I'm telling
here.
you, I'm
Yeah,
serious.
this family stuff's got to go, Eric. This family, you got to
Sorry.
decide who your family really is, dude.
I was
Hey,
supporting my kid. My bad. My
that's
bad.
understandable. Hey, do we think we need to do another show Thursday instead of Monday because of the national championship, or do you still want to do a show on?
Oh, we
Monday?
can't do it. The whole Christmas, New Year's bowl. We got to get back on normal track. But next Monday, trying to do a show during the playoffs would be a
Wait.
mistake.
It just to be the first hour,
You know what? This is what a show would look like on Monday. Oh, were you talking to me, A Train? I mean,
Yeah. Huh?
yeah, it'd be like this. Oh, yeah.
Brett would be cursing like every other word.
Listen.
No, I'm good now. I don't have a dog in a fight.
Like this the whole game.
Listen, there's gonna be some changes around here now.
I would say for the bottom line, we got to get through next week yet, and then I want to go back to the
think we'll be
Monday
good
time
after that.
slot and be
Yeah.
consistent.
I think we'll be good after next week, especially 15th we'll have the schedule drop. So guess what? Y'all will have news before the X-Fan show will. You'll have that, so you'll be ahead of us.
Oh,
So-
don't kid yourself. Dirty old jump in,
Oh, yeah.
If he hears we have a Monday night at 7 or 8, he'll have his Monday night at 6.
Yep.
And if he's listening, you know damn well that's what's going to happen.
Uh-huh.
He ain't playing sloppy seconds to nobody.
Yep.
I got you beat. You ready for this? If it comes out before noon, we dropping the show. I'm telling you. Before noon.
I knew that was coming.
A show will drop before noon.
There ain't no way in
Because the
Sam
schedule will come out in the morning. You know
I
it will.
get a phone call, sir.
There
Fire
is
up
no
the
way in
StreamYard. Let's
Sam
go.
hell.
Yeah.
We could have our show. We could have our show at 1 a.m. on Monday. He'd have a midnight special.
Yep.
Midnight Madness by Dirty and A Train.
Yep.
I'm gonna be like, dang, I gotta do this with him anyway. Look, he could be popping up anytime soon.
He ain't
So,
gonna pop up. It's
Wait,
9
go to-
o'clock. He's probably sleeping on the couch already.
yes. Well, anyway, folks, hey, thank y'all for tuning in to this wild and crazy show that we had tonight, The Bottom Line. And thanks you to our special guest, Howard Balzer. Man, Eric, you came late, man. You got to go back and watch the
Oh,
previous
I'm gonna.
hour. Because he's with.
I'm glad we got another Bears fan in here. I was not aware of that. Bear down, baby.
Isn't that great, man? Well, I just love it when guys come on late and we can sit there and say, you missed an epic show.
Hey, one thing we can all agree on is this comment from Ryan Murphy right here. Dirty's got to be ticked off now that, according to multiple sources that we mentioned early in the show, Danucci's going to be signing with the Broncos. He's not going
And he
anywhere
signed
near.
a 20-year contract.
Goodbye,
He is
dude.
he is never allowed to come back to the UFL ever again.
Hey, we're making a new rule. If Dirty ever mentions him again, it's an automatic mute boot off. Goodbye, Newt.
It's a
Goodbye.
good
We'll
luck
put
on
him
that one.
below Brett, and Brett can drop ashes on his head the whole show.
Yep. Just sit there and flick him off, man. Just flick him off.
Listen here, man. I think we got another hit on our hands. I don't know what everybody see it. Hey, make sure y'all tune into Pro Football Alliance on Facebook and on YouTube. Well, definitely the YouTube channel is where we're going to be heading in the future. So make sure you go in and share all this good stuff, because we having fun here on the bottom line with Daddy Ed, Brett, and Easy E. And I'm just here just to just because I don't get fined. That's what I'm here for. You know what I mean?
You gotta keep
I want
on
to
the
know
line,
where
A-Train.
A-Train gets the all-field access all the time.
You
He's
know what?
always live from the
Sideline
dome.
pass.
If I tell you, I got to kill you. I'm sorry. I can't tell. I can't give my secrets. But hey, folks, thank you guys for coming on, and of course, a great show as always. And we got to do this again. Want to do it again Thursday night again one more time before
Probably
the playoffs.
better.
One more time
more
before the
time.
playoffs. All right,
Yeah.
and then we'll get hopefully some more UFL news will be coming out soon, and we'll see what happens from this point on. All right. So, any last words, Daddy Ed? You can say anything before we get out of here.
All I can say is to all you Hall of Fame voters out there that may be named Howard, this is the dude right here, 69, Jared Allen,
Lord. There you
deserves to be in the Hall of Fame, not only because he was a great defensive lineman, but because that is a damn good number.
Brett, anything before you got to go, sir? Any last words for you, sir?
Well, to all the haters out there, just remember, Alabama always was, always will be college football. There's no other program like. I'm just playing. Everybody have a good night.
And Easy, what you got, man, before we go?
Hey, I'm sorry I wasn't here to make this an even better show with Howard Balzer. I'll try to do better next time. I'll tell my kid tough luck. I don't know what to say.
Tell him to go out for basketball. He wouldn't have been playing tonight.
This is the A-Train. We signing off for this edition of The Bottom Line, a lengthy edition because we had to make sure we get everything in with our special guest, Howard Balzer of Phoenix Sports and Hall of Fame selected. So make sure y'all tune in next week for another edition. And that's how we give The Bottom Line.